The great hall of the Galactic Council was alive with tension. Alien leaders from across the stars sat in their high seats, their eyes glowing, their voices whispering with anger. The chamber itself was a masterpiece of alien design. Tall silver. Walls, glowing panels, and a round floor where debates of peace and war had shaped the fate of galaxies. But today, the air was different. Today, the Council had gathered for one reason: to judge humanity. At the far end of the hall, a door slid, open with a hiss. Every head turned. A figure stepped inside, his steps calm, his posture straight, his face unreadable. It was not a general in armor, not a warrior with weapons, but a man in a simple black suit. His polished shoes clicked softly against the shining floor. He adjusted his cufflinks as though he were walking into a dinner party and not the most dangerous chamber in the galaxy. The aliens stared at him in disbelief. Some hissed in mockery. Some laughed. Others narrowed their eyes with suspicion. This was humanity's chosen representative. Not a soldier, not a king, not even a scientist of renown, just a human in a suit. The council leader, a towering alien with scaled skin and burning yellow eyes, leaned forward. His voice rumbled like thunder. "This is your envoy, Earth, a fragile man of flesh. You insult us." The human diplomat did not flinch. He looked up, his eyes calm, almost bored, and then gave the faintest smile. He said nothing, but the silence around him was heavier than words. Another alien, one with 4 arms and a crown of bone across its head, slammed its claw against the table. "Humans have broken agreements. They have spread too fast, taken too much, claimed too many worlds. Their arrogance cannot be allowed to continue. And this man, this small creature, dares to stand before us." The chamber erupted. Voices shouted over each other, claws slammed against stone, tails whipped against the floor. They accused humanity of expansion, of trespass, of pride. They demanded punishment. They demanded blood. And through it all, the human diplomat simply walked forward, step by steady step, until he stood in the center of the council floor. He adjusted his tie and waited. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He only waited. The silence spread like a shadow. The alien leaders grew louder, their anger feeding on itself. Some demanded sanctions, others demanded war. And finally, one of them rose from his seat and gave the order no one had expected to hear inside the sacred chamber. "Guards!" the alien general barked. "Seize him!" From hidden doors along the walls, armored soldiers stepped out. They were tall, massive, their bodies encased in black plates of alien steel. Each carried weapons that had ended countless lives across countless stars. They marched with confidence, their boots shaking the chamber floor. The alien leaders leaned, forward, curious, excited, eager to see humanity humbled. They expected the man in the suit to panic, to plead, to beg for his life. But the diplomat only tilted his head slightly, as if studying the soldiers with mild interest. Then he straightened his cuffs once more and gave a small sigh, as though this was all a mild inconvenience. One alien whispered, "Why does he not resist? Why does he not run?" Another hissed back, "Because he is a fool. Humans do not understand what awaits them." But a third, older voice muttered quietly, "No, look at his eyes. That is not the look of prey." The soldiers closed in. Their weapons glowed, humming with deadly energy. The air grew heavy. The alien leaders grinned with cruel anticipation. But the diplomat stood perfectly still, his gaze steady, his expression calm. At that moment, the chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. The aliens thought they had already won. They thought this was the end of a weak species' arrogance. But the truth was far different. The humans had not sent a man to beg. They had not sent a man to surrender. They had sent something else. The soldiers lifted their weapons. The order was about to be given. The chamber lights flickered for a brief second, and in that flicker, some of the leaders felt something they had not felt in centuries. Fear, because the man in the black suit did not look afraid. He looked patient. He looked ready. He looked as though he had been waiting for this very moment, and in that instant the council had already made their mistake. The chamber fell silent for a heartbeat. The alien soldiers surrounded the man in the black suit, their weapons humming with deadly light. They were the finest warriors of the Galactic Council, elite soldiers trained to fight in gravity storms, to crush rebellions, to kill without hesitation. Their armor was thick. Their helmets glowed with red scanners. Their claws rested on weapons that had burned entire cities to ash. To the council, this was over before it even began. The alien general gave the command. "Take him!" The first soldier stepped forward, his armored boots clanging against the polished floor. He raised a plasma blade, the weapon glowing bright blue, humming with raw energy. The council members leaned forward, eager to watch the human's fear. But the man did not move. He did not flinch. His eyes followed the soldier calmly, like a teacher watching a child. Then it happened. The soldier lunged. The blade came down fast, meant to cut the human in two. But in the blink of an eye, the man in the suit shifted. His movement was so fast, so smooth, that most of the council did not even see it. One moment the soldier was striking, the next he was crashing to the ground, his weapon clattering across the floor. The black-armored body lay still, silent. Gasps filled the chamber. The alien leaders froze. The other soldiers roared in anger. Two charged at once, their massive forms rushing forward like beasts. The man simply turned his body slightly, one step to the side, one hand reaching out. The sound of metal bending echoed through the hall as one soldier's arm twisted unnaturally. With a single strike, the human sent the other flying across the chamber, his armor denting the wall with a thunderous crash. The diplomat did not look tired. He did not look angry. He only adjusted his tie and stood straight once more, as though nothing important had happened. The council leader slammed a claw on the table. "What are you waiting for? Kill him!" The remaining soldiers obeyed. Plasma. Fire filled the air, bright bolts of energy shooting toward the man in the suit. The floor shook, the walls burned, smoke rose. For a moment, the humans seemed to vanish inside the storm of light. The aliens cheered. Finally, the weakness of flesh had been exposed, but when the smoke cleared, the cheering died. The man stood untouched. His suit was clean, his face calm. Around him, glowing fragments of energy shimmered in the air, as if reality itself had bent to protect him. He had not even raised a weapon, only his hands, only his will. One soldier tried to retreat, fear, breaking through his training. But before he could take another step, the man was in front of him, too fast, too close. A single strike to the chest dropped the armored warrior like a broken toy. Another soldier attempted a desperate attack, screaming as he swung his blade. The human caught the weapon with 2 fingers. The glowing plasma hissed and sparked, but the man only stared, his calm eyes meeting the soldier's terrified gaze. Then he twisted, and the weapon shattered into useless sparks. The soldier's knees buckled and he fell in silence. The floor of the council chamber was no longer polished silver. It was littered with broken armor, shattered weapons, and the bodies of soldiers who moments ago had been the pride of the galaxy. Purple alien blood smeared across the tiles. The smell of fear, sharp and sour, filled the air. The council members sat frozen. Their claws and tentacles twitched nervously. None spoke, none dared. For centuries they had believed themselves untouchable, rulers of the stars, masters of war. And yet one human in a black suit had just undone their illusion in mere moments. The man stood in the center of it all, his breathing calm, his expression unreadable. He brushed imaginary dust from his sleeve. Then he lifted his gaze to the council seats above. "I told you." His voice was soft, but it carried through the hall like thunder. Earth sent a diplomat, but they also sent a warning. His words cut deeper than any blade. The alien leaders shifted uncomfortably, their pride melting into terror. For the first time in memory, they saw themselves not as rulers, but as prey. One of them, shaking, whispered, "He is not a man. He cannot be. What is he?" The diplomat looked at them, his eyes sharp as blades, and gave a small, cold smile. He did not answer. He did not need to. The silence was enough. The silence told them everything. The chamber doors remained closed. No guards came. No help arrived. It was only them and the human in the suit, the one they had thought to humiliate, to destroy. Instead, they had awakened something they could not understand, something that felt older, darker, and far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And as the man took one step forward, the entire council leaned back in fear. Their attack had been a mistake that could never be undone. The floor of the chamber was silent now. The once proud guards lay scattered like broken dolls, their armor cracked, their weapons shattered, their bodies still. The shining tiles were smeared with purple blood that glowed faintly under the council. Lights! The smell of burning plasma and scorched metal lingered in the air. And in the middle of it all, the man in the black suit stood calmly, untouched, as though none of it had happened. The alien leaders stared down from their high seats, their eyes wide, their mouths dry. No one spoke. For centuries, they had watched. Battles, they had ordered wars. They had seen entire planets burn, but never had they seen something like this. One man, one human, had defeated their strongest warriors without breaking a sweat. The council leader finally found his voice. "This is impossible," he whispered. His claws trembled against the stone table. "He is just a man." The diplomat looked up at him. His eyes were calm, but behind them was something the aliens could not name. It was not anger. It was not joy. It was something colder, something final. He spoke, his voice quiet, yet every word carried across the chamber. "Earth sent a diplomat, but you forced me to remind you of what we really are." The words echoed, heavy like iron. Some of the council members leaned back in their seats, as though the human's gaze might cut them in half. Others gripped their chairs, trying to hide their fear, but failing. They had seen soldiers fall, weapons break, and the laws of strength itself crumble in front of them. And still, the man in the suit had not raised a weapon. He had only used his hands, his speed, his presence. One elder, his voice shaking, whispered to those beside him, "He is not a diplomat. He is death-wearing flesh." The chamber shivered with that thought. Death in a suit. The human diplomat began to walk slowly across the chamber floor. Each step echoed against the walls, steady, deliberate. His polished shoes clicked against the tiles, and the sound made even the bravest leaders tense. He walked not like a warrior, but like a judge, calm, certain, final. As he passed the broken soldiers, he did not even look down. To him, they were not opponents, they were not even obstacles, they were just finished. "You thought humanity was weak," he said softly as he walked, his voice echoing in the great chamber. "You thought Earth would bow. You thought you could raise your weapons against us without consequence." He paused and looked up at the leaders, his eyes sharp as blades. "Now you see the truth. A single human was enough to break your pride. Imagine what happens when Earth stops sending diplomats." A cold shiver spread through the council. Even the air seemed heavier. One alien leader, trying to regain control, slammed a claw on the table. "You are no man. You are a weapon. Tell us what you are." The human smiled faintly. "What I am is what you created. Your arrogance, your hatred, your threats. You forced this." He spread his arms slightly, as if inviting them to look at the destruction around him. "I am the reminder of what happens when you forget who we are." The leaders looked at one another. their eyes filled with unease. Humanity had always been underestimated. Small numbers, a young race, barely stepping among the stars. They had mocked humans as fragile, called Earth a backwater world, laughed at their technology, but now, standing before them, was proof that humans were not to be mocked. Not anymore. One by one, the council members lowered their eyes. None dared to challenge him further. None dared to give another order. They had seen enough. The man in the suit reached the center of the chamber again. He looked around, calm, patient, as though giving them one last chance to speak. But the council was silent. Finally, he gave a small nod. "Then you understand." "Good." He straightened his tie once more, and for a moment, the chamber could almost believe he was just a man again, just a diplomat, calm and polite. But the broken soldiers on the floor said otherwise. The shattered weapons said otherwise. The silence of the galaxy's most powerful rulers said otherwise. The truth was simple, terrifying, and undeniable. He was not just a diplomat, he was not just a man, he was death, dressed in a black suit. And as he turned his back to them, walking with steady steps toward the great doors, none dared to move, none dared to breathe too loud. The Council of the Galaxy, the rulers of countless worlds, sat frozen in their seats, like children caught in the dark, for in that moment they finally understood the truth. Humanity was no longer a weak race to mock or ignore. Humanity was a storm waiting to break, a blade hidden in silence, a shadow dressed in black, and they had just seen its face. The great doors of the council chamber closed with a heavy sound, and for a long moment the leaders sat frozen, unable to speak. The image of the human in the black suit walking away lingered in their minds like a ghost. Some still trembled, their hands gripping the edges of their thrones. Others kept staring at the blood-stained floor, unwilling to lift their eyes. No one dared to call him back. No one dared to say another word. But outside the council walls, the story had already begun to spread. Whispers turned into shouts. Messages flashed across star systems, carried by traders, spies, and frightened diplomats. The tale was told in every corner of the galaxy. A single human envoy had destroyed the Council's finest guards. He had not used weapons. He had not even broken a sweat. He had left without fear. At first, many refused to believe it. Some called it propaganda. A trick, a lie told by humans to scare others. But then came the reports, confirmed transmissions, images leaked from the chamber's own systems, footage of alien soldiers collapsing one by one while the man in the black suit barely moved. And then came the whispers of his final words. "Next time, Earth will not send a diplomat." Those words spread like fire. In the far colonies of the reptilian Vurok, soldiers refused their orders to patrol human borders. Among the insectoid kith, the queens gathered in panic, debating whether to send tribute to Earth before it was too late. On the water worlds of the Elari, priests whispered in fear that the humans had awakened a forgotten god and sent him into the Council's heart. The galaxy had seen wars before. It had seen weapons that split moons, fleets that blotted out stars, armies that drowned planets in fire. But this was different. This was one man, one human. And if one could do this, how many more could Earth unleash? The fear grew stronger. Each day, traders in the spaceports told stories in hushed voices. Humans are not what they seem. They walk like us, talk like us, but inside them is something darker, sharper, deadlier. Some claimed the man was not even human, but death itself wearing a human's face. Others swore that his kind were hidden all across Earth, waiting for the signal to rise. Entire empires began to shift their plans. Those who once mocked Earth now drafted peace treaties, hoping to avoid its wrath. Fleets that had been prepared to invade human colonies were recalled in silence. Some leaders even burned their maps of Earth, as if erasing the thought of war could protect them. And yet, For some, the fear turned to something else. Hatred, envy. The knowledge that humans could wield such a weapon shook their pride. They began to plot in secret, whispering of coalitions, of alliances meant to crush Earth before it grew too strong. But even as they planned, their voices trembled. For how do you fight an enemy that can send death in a suit, smiling, calm, unstoppable? On Earth itself, the news was met with silence. The human governments refused to comment. The diplomat's name was never spoken, his origin never revealed. To outsiders, it seemed as though Earth had planned it that way, to let the galaxy wonder, to let the fear grow unchecked. Every unanswered question became a story. Every silence became a threat. One alien captain, speaking in a bar on a neutral station, summed it up with trembling words. I was not there, but I saw the footage. He was not fighting. He was judging. He did not kill with anger. He killed with purpose, like death walking in a suit. And those words became legend. And the dark corners of the galaxy, in the markets, in the fleets, in the courts of kings and queens, one truth began to take root. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not small. Humanity had sent its warning. The galaxy, once proud and unshaken, now trembled at shadows. Every time a human stepped onto a station, eyes followed them with quiet fear. Every time a human envoy walked into a meeting, whispers filled the room. Was this one also death in disguise? Would they too leave a floor covered in blood if crossed? Fear is a weapon sharper than any blade, and now humanity wielded it without firing a shot. The council chambers remained silent in the weeks that followed. No one dared to raise the subject of punishing Earth again. No one dared to question the human colonies. The threat lingered in every mind, unspoken but heavy. If one man could bring us to our knees, what would an army do? The galaxy had changed forever. The great council chamber was still. The broken soldiers had been carried away, but the marks of the battle remained. Cracks on the polished floor, the faint glow of scorched walls, and the smell of burned metal that clung to the air. The leaders of the galaxy sat in silence, their eyes heavy, their minds restless. They waited, though the man in the black suit was gone. They waited because his shadow still lingered. For days afterward, the memory haunted them. His calm walk, his steady eyes, his voice that cut through pride like a blade. No one could erase the image of him standing alone in the center of the chamber, untouchable, unstoppable. But the story was not finished. When the man in the suit had reached the great doors, he had paused. His polished shoes clicked softly as he stopped, and every alien in the chamber leaned forward without meaning to. He turned his head slightly, just enough for them to see his face. His voice was quiet, yet every syllable rang like thunder. "Next time," he said, "Earth will not send a diplomat." The words struck harder than any weapon. Some council members gasped. Others gripped their chairs as though the floor had opened beneath them. The silence afterward was crushing. He walked out then, his back straight, his pace unhurried, as though he had not just destroyed their pride, as though he had not just shaken the galaxy itself. The doors closed behind him, but the echo of his words did not fade. The leaders sat frozen. No one dared to break the silence. Not the council leader, not the generals, not the rulers of empires that had once boasted of their strength. They sat like children who had been warned by a parent. They sat like prey that had seen the shadow of a predator. Outside the chamber, the word spread faster than light. On neutral stations, the story was retold 100 ways. Some said the man had killed the soldiers with his bare hands. Others said he had bent reality itself. Others whispered that he was no man at all, but death given human shape. The details changed, but the heart of the tale never did. A single human diplomat had left the galaxy trembling. On Earth, the reaction was silence. No celebration, no announcement, no speeches. The governments of humanity spoke not a word, letting the galaxy wonder, and that silence was worse than any declaration of war, for silence made the aliens imagine. Silence made them fear, and fear spread. In the markets of the outer colonies, merchants whispered to one another that humanity had finally revealed its true face. In the halls of alien empires, rulers dreamed of armies of men in black suits, each one unstoppable, each one a shadow of death. Entire fleets were held back, cancelled missions quietly erased, invasions postponed without explanation. No one wanted to test Earth again, but fear has two sides. Some species, trembling, began to seek alliance. They sent secret envoys, hoping to stand beside Earth rather than against it. Others began to plot in secret, whispering of desperate measures, to destroy humanity before its power spread further. Yet even in their planning, their voices were hushed, their hands shook. For how do you plan against death itself? The man in the suit was never named. No one knew if he was military, if he was a weapon, if he was something far worse. Some believed he was alone. Others feared he was only one of many. The truth remained locked behind Earth's silence, and that was enough to keep the galaxy awake. At night, in time, songs were written, myths were told. Alien children whispered to each other in fear, "Do not anger the humans, or death in a suit will come for you." Entire generations grew up knowing the warning, even if they never saw the man himself. And still, the words of that day remained, sharp and heavy, carved into memory. Next time, Earth will not send a diplomat. It was not just a threat. It was a promise. A promise that if the galaxy dared to test humanity again, what came would not be calm, would not be polite, would not be wrapped in a black suit. It would be something far worse. And so the galaxy changed. Borders shifted. Fleets were recalled. Wars ended before they began. All because of one man who had walked into a chamber wearing nothing but a suit and walked out as the shadow of death. The human diplomat vanished into history. No one saw him again. No one ever confirmed his existence. Some said Earth had erased him, hidden him away. Others said he had never been a man at all, but something Earth had summoned only once. But to the galaxy, it did not matter. The legend remained. The warning remained. And from that day forward, no alien ruler, no matter how arrogant, no matter how powerful, ever forgot the truth revealed in that chamber. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Humanity was not to be mocked. For when death wears a suit, it does not knock twice.